There is a place in the ocean so lethal, so stripped of usable energy, that even sperm whales, the largest predators ever designed for deep diving, do not remain there. At first glance, that sounds counterintuitive, because sperm whales are built for extremes. They descend through crushing pressure that increases with every meter. They hunt in temperatures just above freezing, and they navigate an environment where sunlight has long disappeared. Their bodies are specialized for oxygen conservation, their muscles are adapted for prolonged submersion, and their massive heads house one of the most powerful biological sonar systems ever evolved. In almost every measurable way, they are engineered to dominate the deep ocean. But there is a region they avoid. It must represent something more fundamental than pressure or darkness. The deadliest place in the ocean is not defined by depth alone. It is defined by collapse. The collapse of oxygen, the collapse of food density, and ultimately the collapse of the energy balance that sustains large, warm-blooded animals. In that environment, survival is no longer about strength or adaptation. It becomes a matter of raw metabolic arithmetic. Every sperm whale dive is an investment. It consumes stored oxygen, burns through energy reserves, and requires a guaranteed return in calories to justify the cost. As long as prey exists in sufficient density and dissolved oxygen remains within survivable limits, the equation works. But deeper still lies a region where oxygen levels fall towards suffocation, where organic material raining down from above has already been nearly exhausted, and where the search for food can demand more energy than it provides. That region has a name. It exists in specific basins of the ocean, and despite its inaccessibility, it represents one of the clearest biological limits on Earth. Over the next few minutes, we are going to identify that place precisely, understand what makes it biologically deadly, and explain why even a 50-ton predator cannot afford to stay there, and why the most dangerous place in the ocean is not the deepest but the most starved. An adult sperm whale can weigh as much as a fully loaded semi-truck, yet it moves vertically through the ocean with deliberate efficiency. Before a deep dive, it takes a series of controlled breaths at the surface, saturating its blood and muscles with oxygen. Unlike most mammals, a significant portion of its oxygen is stored not only in the lungs, but in the bloodstream and muscle tissue, bound to specialized proteins that allow prolonged submersion. As the descent begins, its heart rate slows dramatically, reducing oxygen consumption, while blood flow is redirected toward essential organs, the brain and heart, and away from less critical tissues. At depths beyond 1,000 meters, sunlight is no longer a factor. The whale relies entirely on echolocation, emitting powerful clicks that travel through the water, strike distant prey, and return as detailed acoustic maps. In these depths, it hunts large squid that themselves are highly adapted to darkness and pressure. The chase is not random. It is calculated, efficient, and governed by a simple objective: maximize caloric return before oxygen reserves run low. Pressure, which increases by 1 atmosphere every 10 meters, becomes immense at 2,000 meters, yet the whale's body tolerates it, because air-filled spaces compress safely and flexible tissues absorb the force. Temperature hovers just above freezing, but thick layers of blubber preserve internal warmth, maintaining a stable body temperature despite the cold. From a purely mechanical perspective, very little in the mid to deep ocean can stop this animal. It can dive deeper than most of its prey. It can remain submerged longer than almost any other mammal. It can locate food in absolute darkness. And yet all of these advantages are built around one non-negotiable condition. There must be enough oxygen in the surrounding water to support complex ecosystems, and there must be enough prey density to justify the cost of each descent. The whale does not dive blindly into emptiness. It hunts in regions where life, although sparse, still functions within a workable energy economy. But remove that economy, and the entire system destabilizes. The question now becomes unavoidable. What kind of environment is so deprived of oxygen and food that even this biological machine cannot operate there efficiently? To answer that, we need to descend further into a region where the ocean itself begins to suffocate. If you like discovering how the deep sea really works and want to see more predator stories like this, subscribe to this channel. Every video, we bring you real science from the most extreme places on the planet. As the sperm whale descends beyond its usual hunting range, the ocean does not suddenly become more dramatic. It becomes more empty. The change is subtle at first, almost invisible, but biologically it is profound. Oxygen levels begin to fall, not because the water is deeper, but because circulation slows and decomposition accelerates. In certain regions of the world's oceans, this process creates what scientists call oxygen minimum zones, vast layers where dissolved oxygen drops so low that complex life begins to struggle. These zones are not rare pockets. They span entire basins, sometimes stretching for thousands of kilometers. Near the surface, phytoplankton produce oxygen through photosynthesis, forming the base of the marine food web. But as organic matter sinks, bacteria consume it, using up oxygen in the process. If deep water circulation is weak, that oxygen is not replenished efficiently. The result is a layer of water that is not completely devoid of life, but dangerously close to it. For small, slow-moving organisms with low metabolic demands, survival remains possible. Many species adapt by reducing activity, slowing growth, or developing specialized respiratory pigments that bind oxygen more effectively. But for a massive, warm-blooded predator, the margin is far thinner. A sperm whale does not simply float and wait. It hunts actively. It accelerates, turns, pursues, and captures prey in three-dimensional space. All of that requires oxygen, and while it carries a significant internal reserve, the surrounding ecosystem must still support enough prey to justify the dive. In oxygen-poor zones, prey populations thin dramatically. Squid and fish either avoid these layers or reduce their activity within them. The food web compresses toward areas where oxygen remains stable. Now the equation shifts. The whale can physically enter these regions, but the return on energy investment drops sharply. Each additional meter downward increases travel cost, while prey becomes less predictable and less abundant. The deeper the oxygen collapse intensifies, the more scattered life becomes, until hunting transitions from strategic pursuit to expensive searching. And then comes the final constraint, ascent. No matter how efficient the dive, the whale must always reserve enough oxygen to power a vertical climb back to the surface. In an environment where prey density is unreliable and oxygen stress is high, the safety margin narrows. At some point, instinct and evolution converge on the same conclusion: it is not worth it. And below these oxygen-starved layers lies an even harsher realm, one where scarcity becomes absolute. Below the unstable boundary of the oxygen minimum zones lies a realm that is often mistaken for simply deeper ocean, when in reality It represents a structural break in how ecosystems function. This is the Hadal environment, the deep ocean trenches that plunge beyond 6,000 meters, narrow scars in the seafloor where tectonic plates collide and the planet folds inward on itself. These trenches are not just deeper, they are isolated, steep-walled systems where circulation is weak, organic input is inconsistent, and biological productivity approaches its lowest possible limit. At these depths, pressure exceeds 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. That alone is survivable for certain highly specialized organisms. What makes this environment lethal to large predators is not pressure but energy collapse combined with ecological isolation. Very little organic material reaches these trenches. Most of what sinks from above is consumed long before it ever approaches the seafloor. What does arrive tends to accumulate slowly, unpredictably, often dependent on rare events such as carcasses falling from upper layers. Entire communities may rely on the occasional descent of a dead whale or large fish to sustain them for months or even years. In between those events, life slows to a near standstill. The species that dominate here are small, soft-bodied, and metabolically efficient. Many lack swim bladders, some have transparent tissues, others exhibit extreme pressure adaptations in their cellular chemistry. Nearly all share one trait: low energy demand. Their survival strategy is patience. A sperm whale represents the opposite biological strategy. It is fast relative to its environment. It is warm-blooded. It burns energy continuously to maintain internal temperature. Even at rest, its metabolic cost is enormous compared to any trench-dwelling organism. To operate in the Hadal trenches, it would need reliable prey density, yet these trenches do not support large populations of squid or fish. The food web simply does not scale upward. More critically, the geometry of trenches makes hunting inefficient. They are narrow, steep, and structurally complex. Echolocation, which works exceptionally well in open water, becomes less predictable in confined geological formations where sound reflects chaotically off walls and sediment. The whale could descend there. It has the physiological capacity to approach such depths under extreme circumstances, but evolution does not reward capability alone. It rewards efficiency. The Hadal trenches represent that limit with brutal clarity. They are not empty, but they are energetically starved. They are not chaotic, but they are unforgiving. Every organism that survives there does so by minimizing cost. Smaller bodies, slower movements, colder metabolisms, extreme biochemical adaptations that reduce the need for oxygen and conserve every possible calorie. In that world, success is measured not by dominance but by efficiency. A sperm whale stands at the opposite end of that spectrum. It is powerful, intelligent, and extraordinarily capable, but it is also expensive. Its brain consumes vast amounts of energy. Its muscles demand oxygen. Its warm blood requires constant fuel to maintain temperature in near-freezing water. Even its hunting strategy is built around the assumption that prey will be dense enough to justify pursuit. In most of the deep ocean, that assumption holds. The midwater ecosystem, though sparse, still circulates nutrients. Oxygen remains present. Squid populations remain viable. The energy equation, while tight, still balances. But in the deepest trenches, that balance breaks. Prey density collapses. Oxygen availability becomes inconsistent. Geological isolation disrupts circulation. The cost of descending, searching, and ascending exceeds the likely caloric return. For a massive air-breathing predator, the margin for error is too thin. This is why even sperm whales avoid the deadliest place in the ocean, not because they are incapable of reaching it, but because survival there would violate the core rule that governs all complex life. Energy must exceed expenditure. When that rule fails, size becomes a liability, strength becomes irrelevant, and endurance means nothing. If you look at the ocean as a system of energy flow rather than a map of depths, the trenches stop being mysterious voids and start revealing something more important: the precise edge of what large oxygen-dependent life can sustain. Thanks for watching and exploring the deep with us. If you enjoy uncovering how the ocean really works, subscribe to the channel and stay with us, and I'll see you in the next episode.